Hi everyone, this is Srinivas Kalyan again. I'm really glad to meet you all once again on this online Python workshop. And today's topic is exception handling. It is one of the best thing in Python. First we start this session with today's agenda. I'm going to divide this topic into two parts, part 1 and part 2. In part 1, we will see objectives, what is exception, and built-in exceptions, raising an exception and assertion. And part 2, handling exception and user-defined exceptions. Let's start our first video on exception handling. And these are the topics that we're going to see in this first video. So first let's move on to the first topic in part 1 video, objectives. So this thing that you're going to get from this topic. So these are the things that you're going to get from this topic. By the end of the part 2 video, you might have learned all this keywords and functions that are available in exception handling in Python. What is an exception? Exception is an irregular state that is originated by a runtime error in your program. An exception is usually bothers the flow of the program. Let me show you an example. In this example, at the first line, we were adding two strings, it performing a concatenation operation, and we got a new string and no errors. Similarly, when we adding two integers, just 2 and 4, we got a result 6 without an error. But when we're trying to add two different data types, which is string and integer, we got an error saying that type error must be string, not integer. But actually we done here is we try to add two different data types. More specifically, we here add an integer data type with a string data type. We cannot add an integer data type with a string data type. So the interpreter throws an exception here. And there are more than 20 built-in exceptions are in Python. And these are the few exceptions we regularly see while coding. And you can see the first is a zero division error. It tries to when we divide anything by zero, it tries an error. Index error, it will alleviated due to out of range sequence. And name error, alleviated while the variable is not available. And the syntax error, alleviated while the syntax error is meant. And indentation error, elevated while the indentation is incorrect. And type error, elevated while the function or operation is related to an object or enormous type. And keyboard interrupt, elevated while the interrupt key Ctrl plus C is hit by the user, which it is usually kills a program. First we see an example for zero division error. In this example, I assign a value 12 to a variable a and we are dividing a by 0. So when we try to divide a by 0, it throws an exception. In mathematics, anything divided by 0 is infinity, but in computer science, we cannot represent infinity with zeros and ones. So in computer science, dividing anything by 0 is an error. Index error. In this example, the index of the list here is 0 to 4. At the index position 0, it has 1. At the 1, it has 2, and so on. But there is no index position 5 in that list. If we try to print any value within the range, it gets printed without error. But uh, if we try to access beyond the range, it throws an error called index error. The name error. You can see the Python 3.6, which is visible at the top of the interpreter when you newly open it. At the very first line, I have written a statement print a. You can see I haven't declared a it before, and it throws a name error which is for name a is not defined because I haven't declared the variable a before the print a statements. And it not only for variable, it also for function name and also for class name. If you haven't declared them before calling the statement, the interpreter throws a name error and a syntax error. We all know that for performing addition operation, we need one operator and two operands. Here is the example. We have one operand and one operator, and the other operand is missing. So it is a syntax error. Whenever we did a mistake in the syntax, example like you forgot to put a colon at the end of for if else, and if the interpreter throws in syntax error for it. Indentation error. For indentation, we can use how many space we want. We can use 1 or 2 or 3 or even 4. If we use 4 space before the first line of the indentation, then we have to use the same 4 space for all the following lines, or else the interpreter throws an indentation error. Type error. We have already seen the example for type error in the beginning. And last one is a keyboard interrupt. While a program is executing, if we press the interrupt key, which is Ctrl C, the program execution will stop there and exits. We'll see an example for keyboard interrupt. First, I'm going to assign a values from 0 to 9 to I. I'm going to show you the easiest way to assign a consecutive values to a variable. So I'm going to assign values from 0 to 9, a list of values from 0 to 9 to the variable I. So this is the easiest way. Yep, you can see I have assigned a values from I printed, so I contains a values from 0 to 9. Now I'm going to assign a values from 0 to 10,000 to I, and I'm going to print them by using for loop. So while I'm printing them, the program starts printing the values from 0 to 10,000. In between, I'm going to press the interrupt key. And when I press the interrupt key, the program is going to stop and produce an error that the interrupt key has been pressed. So right after the error produced, the program is going to get terminated. Let's see that now. So it started printing from 0 to 10,000. Now I'm gonna hit the interrupt key. Yes. You can see that the program is being terminated and it's showing the error that the interrupt keyboard interrupt is occurred. Raising an exception. It is possible to define a new exception and raise if it is needed. This is done using the raise statement. Even when the code doesn't produce an exception, if we want to raise an exception for any program, if it is satisfying a condition. Syntax for raising an exception. Here, raise is the keyword and exception is the exception name that is going to raise. This is an example program for raising an exception. In this program, I'm going to raise an if I'm going to raise a value error if the user input is less than 0. And this is the syntax for raising an exception. And the raise is a keyword here, and the exception is what we're going to what exception we're going to raise, and the argument is going what we are passing the statement stating that what error happened here. First, we get input from the user. Let's assign the input to value a. So variable a. Now we'll check a condition. If a value a is less than 0, I'm going to raise an exception. So raise, I'm going to raise a value error. The argument saying that it's too low. Now, if the condition isn't satisfied, I'm going to print the value that is usually entered as it is. So print a. Once again, I'll explain the program. First, I'm going to get an input from the user, and then I'll check the input whether it is less than or less than 0. If it is less than 0, I'm going to raise a value error, which is a value error with the argument too low, and I'm going to print if it is greater than 0, I'm going to print the value as it is. Now run the program. First I'm going to assign a positive value. Let's assign 5. So 5 get printed and it doesn't produce any error, and run it again. This time I'm going to give a negative value, which is -1. So this is going to produce an error. You can see the value error is get raised, and with the argument too low that we have passed here. So this is the way how you raise an error. Assertion in Python. An assertion is a sanity check in Python that can be turned on or off while testing a program. In assertion, an expression is tested, and if the result is false, an exception is raised. Assertion are done using the assert statement. The application of assertion is to check for a valid input or for a valid output. The following shows us the syntax: assert expression and argument. When Python interpreter encounters an assertion statement, it evaluates the accompanying expression. If the expression is evaluated to false, Python raises a assertion error exceptions. If the assertion fails, Python uses the argument expression as the argument for the assertion error. The assertion error exception can be caught and handled like other exceptions using the try except statement. But if it is not handled, they will terminate the program and produce a traceback. So, and it is an example program. It is an example video for assertion, and this is the syntax for assert expression. Now I'm going to write a program where I'm going to get two inputs from the user, and I'm going to add them. If the addition result is lesser than 0, I'm going to raise an assertion error with the argument too low. So first we get two inputs from the user, first value and second value, and I'm going to store them in the variable a and b here. Second value. Now we just define a function here. Yeah, def sum a comma b, and we're going to add a and b and store the value into the variable c equal to a plus b. And this is the place where we're going to write our assert statement, and assert statement is with the keyword assert and followed by the expression. If we're going to check whether the value with the result is lesser than 0. If it is lesser than 0, if we're going to first assign them as c greater than 0. If the expression is failed, then we are going to raise an assertion exception, and with the argument value is too low. So this is what assertion statements are. And if the condition is get failed, we're going to raise an exception. If the condition is get true validated, then the assert statement won't get executed. It's the control is move on to the next statement, print c. So here we're going to print the result equal to c. If the expression is validated true, then we're going to print the value. If it is failed, then it's going to raise an exception. Now run the program. I'm going to save the program as so the first value is we're going to assign like -8, and second one is going to -2. So the result will be -10, which is lesser than 0. So oh wait, yes, I forgot to call some here. Come on, okay, now save it and run it again. First value is -8, and second is -2. Now yeah, you can see that the -8 and -2 is produce -10, which is lesser than 0, and the condition c greater than 0 is get failed. So the assertion error is raised with the argument that we have passed here, value is too low. So this is a program for Assertion, and you have a clear picture of what Assertion is look like. That's all for the part 1 video. We will see the remaining two topics in the next video.